Recording.
I'm Kathy Cole, and this is Ron Robinson, and we're interviewing Frank Lanier at his home in Buell, Idaho. And Ron and Frank worked together for many, many years, so Ron's going to kind of lead the interview, starting out with your birth.
Born in 33 at Crooked Creek on Stanley Basin.
Was that at the old Trapper Fisher cabin, or is
No,
that
it was at the Foley place. You know where Foley's used to have a place there. What the heck? I don't know who had it before them, but when we lived there, there's us living there, and then my uncle Doherty, Henry Doherty, which was my mom's sister's husband, lived there.
How many kids were in your family? How many children were in your family?
10.
Were they all born at the same place?
No, I was the only one born there that I know of.
Oh.
One was born in Lower Stanley, and the twins was born up at Grandma's house,
Where's
Which was
Grandma's
where?
house?
up on Meadow Creek. Grandma Merritt place. And Short was the first one. He was about the 5th or 6th kid, and he was the only one born in the hospital. The rest of them was all born to midwives or nurse, whichever.
And you said Dr. Day was the doctor when you were growing up?
Well, he was a doctor there. He didn't have anything to do with anybody or anything, but just if we went to somebody, I went to him one time, my back got out, and they said I would have been crippled if it hadn't been for him. He was kind of a osteopath or whatever you call him, between a chiropractor and a doctor. And then Dr. Day, we did go to him in the later years. Or not Dr. Day, but Dr. Fox. Dr. Haley.
Did you go to school up at Stanley?
Yeah, I went there 8 years.
Do you remember the teachers' names?
Matty Hanson was my first teacher.
Did you have Phyllis Williams?
Phyllis Williams was a couple of times. And then we had one that was an alcoholic that didn't last too long. And
Did you go to school with any of the Williams kids? Or was that
no,
the
not
right
the
name?
Williamses, but went with the Sullivans. All the Williams kids were all older. Morgan was the youngest, and he was in the service when I was in school.
And so what did you do as a child growing up there?
Do what?
What did you do as a child growing up there? What were some of the things you did?
Oh, I don't know, whatever we wanted, I guess.
Well, you had to milk cows every day.
Yeah, well, that was a daily job. Twice
And you
a
had
day.
to round them up before you could milk them?
Right. We milked them wherever they were. We didn't put them in a pen or nothing. We did milk them wherever they was at.
How many cows did you have?
Probably 4 or 5. We had one old cow trained, we'd ride her and chase the others in with her.
Did you have to milk them in the morning and at night?
Right,
Before school?
right before school. That's
What
why
did your mom and dad do for work?
well, Dad worked for the Forest Service sometimes, worked for the state, and then he was self-employed. They worked in the cafe cooking, him and Mom both.
What cafe?
Alamo,
Oh, the Alamo.
yeah, with Eddie Martin. They both cooked there.
They were both cooks.
Huh?
They were both cooks?
Yeah,
And when you say you worked for the state, that's the state transportation department,
right,
right?
highway department, yeah. He only worked there, I don't know, a couple times. They wasn't full-time, and then he worked for the Forest Service in the summertime, so part-time.
So did he work with Bud Critchfield?
Yeah. Well, actually, who was, Bud worked there, I think, at the same time, but Dad was run patrol, and he would go down to Clayton and then blade back. And Bob Lee was the foreman then, or the boss. when he worked for it. That was when I was only probably about, well, I wasn't even in school because I went down there and stayed with him one spring, or the spring he was down there.
You went down and stayed where?
Down to Clayton Ranger Station, that little house that we had there, Forest Service had, or the state had.
So then would you have to go to school at Clayton?
No, I wasn't in school yet. This is before I was in school. Just 1 year. They'd go down there and stay for 2 weeks and then come home. Work their way back up. Because they used to have to go clear to, down to East Fork Bridges, you know where the 2 bridges were there. That's where they started. That was the division, divide between Chalice and Stanley.
Oh,
And when you say they had to work their way back up, is that because of slides?
No, it was spring, dirt road, and they blade from, as it thawed out, as it come back up.
So was Stanley completely cut off in the wintertime when you were
No,
a child?
the road was open in the winter, but it was, down the river, but that's the only way. They didn't have Galena Summit open or nothing. In fact, I don't think they started keeping Galena Summit open till, what, 54? Something like that. Then they started keeping it open. They'd close it every winter and then it'd open it in the spring.
now you said one set of grandparents homesteaded Knapp Creek?
And Knapp Creek's where Dad and his brother and his mom did. They came from West Virginia.
Where's Knapp Creek?
Just this, where Cape Horn Ranger Station is.
And when did your grandparents?
Now it's Johnny Jones's place. And in fact, I think he donated it to the Forest Service, I think, and got it now.
What year did they homestead that, do you know?
17, I think, when Dad did, or Grandma did. But my mom's family, they homesteaded in 07,
At Meadow Creek.
Meadow Creek. They were headed for Big Hole, Montana, and they didn't make it that far.
Headed there from where?
From Jackson, Montana, or Wyoming.
Oh,
They went from Jackson, Wyoming to Cherry Creek, Nevada, and then back up when it was headed for Big Hole, Montana. And they stayed in Stanley. In fact, they worked in Ketchum for putting up hay for the summer to get some money to get over the hill over there.
really? Now, did you put up hay out there at Meadow Creek? Was
Yep.
it hay derrick that's
Yep.
there?
That was our, Mom mowed all that. She had 40 acres of hay. She mowed with a 5-foot sickle of the horses. Take a week or so to mow it. Then we pitch it all on slips, or on a slip, and you pull behind the horses with slings, and you'd lift it with the derrick and dump it. And it was some of it we took right out of water. It was that wet. Then they'd put rock salt in it when you stacked it. Keep it from burning up. Some of those slip loads are so heavy, you pretty near tip the derrick over, but raise them up.
And how many acres was that? How many acres?
40.
40 acres.
The grandpa gave it to Mom when she got married.
So what did Stanley look like when you were growing up as a child?
Well, it had, it's Danner cabins now, and the shaw garage, rock garage, and then it had, 4 bars. Had the Alamo, the Ace of Diamonds, and the one Brewer had, what was it, name it?
Rod and gun.
Huh?
Rod and gun.
Rod and Gun, but it belonged to, this was before Brewer, it belonged to Bell Dave Bell, I think he's the one that built it. And then the hotel that you guys had. And then there was the bar, this ones that, I can't think of any names now.
It's okay, we can come back to that.
And then Russell Vaughn had a shoe shop. He did shoe, leather work and stuff. And Juggy Neese had the bar, or the gas station. And Preston had a gas station.
Was there a grocery store?
And the grocery store was Claude Gillespie's.
That's where McCoy's tackle shop?
Right. That was Claude Gillespie's, and then he sold out to Gregory. Then Gregory, they moved 2 houses from over there by, over just down where your hotel was. They moved 2 houses from there, built him, Gregory a new store over there in the middle of town where he was later.
Because he was the one that built the post office that had the laundromat.
The rock one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gregory did that. Gregory lived in where nieces lived in the, behind by your place there. There was a little tar paper house out there that he lived in. And that building that Jack and Ruth had, that guy by the name of Sweetland was gonna build a gambling hall there, and he never did get it built. Then when Jack got it, he finished it, made a house out of it.
So if Russ and Susie Vaughn lived there, Craig and Betty Rimmer must have been living there too. She was a nurse.
Who's that?
Craig and Betty Rimmer.
They never did live there.
Oh, they didn't live in town?
No, they lived up at the ranch.
Oh.
The ranch that they got now used to belong to a guy named Pearson, I think it was. That was Polly Fleming's wife, Harry Fleming's wife.
Harry and Martine.
Martine, it was Martine's folks that owned where Craig is now, or Craig's place is now. And he's
And
the one
that's
that,
where they lived.
yeah. Well, at that time, they lived in Haven. They didn't even live in Stanley. Craig and Betty didn't.
Oh,
No, they didn't. They didn't until a long time later.
okay.
But Russell and Susie had that house, and then some people by the name of Babers had the house next to them. And I don't know who owns it now or other.
Well, that gives them an idea of where they were at, because some of those names will ring bells.
Did you go to church up there?
Nope.
What church was in Stanley?
Well, I went to Sunday school in Ace of Diamonds. They used to have one once in a while, Sunday school deal, you know, I mean, just a show or something. There wasn't no churches.
Just bars.
I know you've told me where to go fishing, because when you were growing up, you used to go into some of the lakes and stuff. How?
Well, not when I was growing up, when I went back went back up there to work, then I went to a lot of them, but before that, we never been to it. Well, we used to go salmon spearing up at Cape Horn Creek every year, 4th of July, but then it was legal. In fact, I think we got a few pictures of that.
Did you guys can the salmon? Did you can the salmon, your mom?
We used to get canned salmon all the time, because Grandma's brother had a cannery in Alaska, and he used to send a case every year.
Tell us anything about the rodeo grounds?
Well, the only thing I can remember about the rodeo grounds, I went to the last rodeo they had there,
When was that?
and, well, that was probably 38, 30 somewhere. I wasn't very old, I remember, though. Went with Bud, and I don't know if he was even married yet, before him and Stella got married. Yeah, well, they was going together, I think, at the time. But anyway, there used to be a mud hole right there just before you got to the rodeo ground, and old Dad Cameron had a team of horses there, He'd charge everybody 50 cents to pull them out of the mud hole.
So how did they set the rodeo up?
It was
Did
a
you
rodeo.
did you guys all ride horses or?
No, we rode, and Bud had an old car, I don't know what the heck it was, it had a big old trunk on the back of it. I don't know what kind of a car it was, but it was an old one. Probably wasn't too old then, but I mean, I don't know who put the rodeo on, but
Did the Shivers own the rodeo grounds at that time?
did what?
Shivers?
Probably. But they were there for Chalice. They didn't live up there.
Did they probably summered stock on that land?
No, I don't know who put the stock in. They had cows. They had cows up there. I mean, yeah, they had association had the cows up there. But they just had the cow camp, and they had a cow camp guy that took care of the cows and that. So Shivers and them just come up on when the roundup usually.
Did you kids help round up this?
No, I
Cow
helped
farm?
Roy Shivers one time move his cows, but that's just from his place out there down to Casino Creek the first day, and then I never helped him again. Just one time. That was Roy Shivers.
Did you have other livestock besides the milk cows?
Had 2 horses, team of horses. Then we had a saddle horse once or twice, but they didn't last long. Dad got rid of them because we had to feed them. We didn't have anything to use them for. Huntington's gave us one time. And then Warren Brewer gave us one.
And then you told me a story once about your dad going out when you ran out of hay there at Meadow Creek. And
Yeah, I had to go up to Dave Williams'. Took 2 days to go up there and then go up and come back.
a team of horses and a sleigh.
Team of horse and sled. The hay rack, they had a big hay rack on us. Double bob sled.
Did you start getting jobs before you left Stanley? Did you work up in the Stanley Basin?
No. Well, first job I ever had to help Ted Williams build a chicken house. He gave me $3, I think. He was a carpenter.
About what year was that?
Oh, probably 45, somewhere in there. Probably 10 years old or something like that.
And you got $3 for it.
Yeah, I got $3. Well, no, also I take back, Wayne, my brother and I went on a pack trip into Big Meadows, you know where they are on Warm Spring Creek. From some people staking claims over there. They were out of Boise, and Ted Williams took them in there, and we went in for 2 weeks. And we measured that mountain with off, and then put rock piers up for the stakes in there. And that was probably in 44, 45. Probably 10 years old, 11.
Did you go into the military?
Yeah. In 53,
What branch?
Army. Was in there 53 to 55. I put in to go to Alaska and went to Germany. Was over there 15 months. Then came back to Fort Riley, Kansas. That's where I got out at.
Well, what other stories can you tell us about the characters up in Stanley and different people?
Oh, there's
that
a lot
live
of
there?
characters.
Can you talk about a few?
Well, I just knew who they were, but They were a bunch of old gamblers, old Ernie the Finn, and it was one of them. Well, then Trapper Green. I don't know what, he must have been an old trapper or something, but anyway, they called him Trapper Green.
So how'd you know about the gambling? Did you get to go in to wherever it was happening?
You could go in John Ruckavini's and play dice. He'd play with you, take your dime or whatever you had. And then they had gambling in all that places at that time.
But you didn't work in any mines up at Stanley?
No,
Sawmill?
no, first mine I was in was cobalt.
So that must have been before you went to work for the highway department.
Yeah, right. When we got married in '56, and we went to cobalt, and we stayed there till '58. And then went to work for state in '59.
Out of Stanley?
Yeah,
And
worked at Stanley for 6 years and then went to Haley.
And you married in what year, and who'd you marry?
56, I don't know who she is.
He's getting sentimental.
Can't remember names.
And where's Marilyn from?
Marilyn's from Mackey.
Her maiden name?
Twitchell.
How'd you guys meet? If you're in Stanley and she's in Mackey?
Well, it's after we moved to Chalice. We moved to Chalice in '48. And then was partying in Mackey, I guess, when we met.
Tell all our secrets.
When did they build Highway 21?
Oh, they didn't finish that until after we went to work there in '59, about 60 or 61, when they finished it. And the road from Haley to Stanley wasn't even oiled clear to Stanley at the time when I went to work there. It was oiled up to Hanson's. They're about a fish hatchery. From there on in, it wasn't oiled. They finished it the year I went to work, '59. And the year there was the oil in the road over Galena, I was working at Smiley Creek, sawmill there. And that was the year we got married in '56.
And you talked about a person that lived in Stanley, Carol.
Oh,
Foley?
Carol Foley.
What about her and what she did for the mine, or him, you do for the mines?
Well, I didn't know him at the time when he was hauling the mail or fruit, stuff up to the mine. That was before probably about the time I was little, but I mean, I don't remember him. But I knew him later.
And they just took supplies into the mines?
Right, with a dog teeth, yeah.
Did you
And
know
then-
Harry Fleming and his father?
Did what?
Did you know Harry Fleming and his dad?
I knew him, but I didn't know his dad.
Cause he did the
Yeah, he did it
over
for
the-
40 years.
Galena, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I knew the guy before him even, Brockway, Frank Brockway. And he lived up there at Clark and Miller's. And Dad was I don't know if he was a deputy at the time, but anyway, Frank Brockway was doing something and he just had a heart attack and died. Dad had to go up like a coroner or whatever because he was a deputy. But he used to bring Harry did too. They used to bring their horses down and just leave them on the barn down there. In fact, Harry's kids and them, they used to come in with horses like that and leave them all day and then ride them back home. They lived up there.
So did you get mail in the wintertime when you were snowed in at Stanley?
Yeah. Yeah.
How'd that happen?
They came up the river.
Oh.
Yeah, they brought, the road was open up the river.
What's the most snow slides you remember on the river?
Oh, I couldn't count that high. That one day we plowed snow slides, we'd go down the river and we'd start back up and you'd see snowballs coming down the river, so you knew there was a slide above you, so you go put it out, take it out, turn around, go back. I bet there's probably 50 in one day. They weren't all, they weren't all big ones, they plugged the road, but I mean, we did them with the V plow.
Who worked with you on the highway department during the time that you were clearing the slides out?
Bud, Mike Sharpen, and Glenn Vaught, and then Dean Smith, and who else?
Did Kent Shaw work with you?
Hmm?
Kent Shaw?
No. They all worked before I did,
Oh.
but they just did part-time at it. So when I started, Dale Wells was working there before I was, and then when he quit, well, they hired me. But just before I started working there, they used to have to work 5.5 days. They had to work a half a day every Saturday. And they had 5 people, and when I started working, they only had 4.
How about Edgar?
Edgar's the one that hired me,
Edgar who?
Obichay. But it used to be the state did, that when there was a Democratic governor, you had to have a Democratic boss. And when it was a Republican governor, you had to have a Republican boss. So Edgar, Obichay, and the guy out there to catch him, they took turns of being boss. And then Edgar transferred over to Stanley, and then that was when they changed it. Didn't make any difference who the governor was. It's usually what they do. The one guy'd work for the other one, and they just switch positions.
So you told us a few times about over the years about being snowed in at Stanley, and they had to send in the National Guard.
Well, it wasn't snowed in. It was the animals. They came in to open to get hay or feed into some of the animals because people had run out.
What year was that?
I don't know. It was in the 40s before we moved to Chalice. In the early 40s.
So they sent in the National Guard to help open up areas that.
Right. They brought a cat in there. I remember caterpillars, if they don't cut holes in the tracks, the snow builds up in there and breaks the tracks. They got to have soap. Well, they had brought one in there, and it made it about halfway up valley or the meadow, and that's where it spent the winter. They broke down, and of course we had the horses and stuff that we got around with.
And what kind of feed did they bring in for the animals?
They flew in cottonseed cake for some of them.
In an airplane?
Yeah, dropped it. Because some of them that had more cows, they run out of food or hay for them. I can't remember what year it was, but that was in the 40s, early 40s.
Were you working with Bud Critchfield when the road was closed and one of their kids got sick and I think their son got sick and he had to open the road in order to get him down to Salmon? I'm not sure if that's the way it went.
Edgar got sick and had appendicitis, and they couldn't get over Galena. They took him clear around through Ark and went out to Haley. But I don't know about the other one.
Well, let's stop for a
One that stayed sober one year. It was when CC's was there. I mean, there's people from all over. and they'd help him out, and they had a truck there, and if they got in a fight or something, they'd just throw them a truck and haul them out of town.
Dump them out alongside the road?
Yeah, let them go out and fight.
So your dad was a deputy for Custer County?
Yeah, just usually on Saturday, well, all the time, I guess, but usually on Saturday nights when he had to go somewhere. But Merritt, I don't know if you heard of him or not, but he was the sheriff in Chalice. That's who he worked for. And Dad couldn't make it one weekend or Saturday, so Merritt came up, and he always wore his badge on his belt. Well, they had a fight, and he went to stop the fight, and they beat the hell out of him. They didn't know he was the sheriff or who he was.
How many CCs were there around there? Do you
Oh, there
remember?
was this camp at Redfish Lake, there was a camp out at Cape Horn, there was a camp down at Clayton. They built a lot of them roads around that country.
And the fire lookouts? Or no?
Do what?
The fire lookouts?
Yeah, they built on them too. Yeah. But what CC's was just a camp for give a job to people that didn't have work. And they was that's how Kenny Berry, you knew him, didn't you? He came from back east with the CC's. Gregory come in there with the CC's. I don't know who, well, old Salmon, Steelhead Salmons, you know him? Yeah, he come in with the CC's.
Who's Steelhead Salmons?
Worked for the Forest Service out of Chalice. They had a lot of people come in that way.
Do you remember any other funny stories about your dad being sheriff?
Well, somebody came in one time and Silva's, they had the place, up there by Stanley Creek. Somebody come one time and stole all four wheels off of Silva's car out there. They had to go try to find them, but he didn't. That was during the war when tires was hard to get. Old Art Silva, the old man.
Was that Floyd's dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to stop there at the house all the time when we lived there in the hotel. He had stomach trouble. And he said he had eggs for breakfast and eggnog for dinner and something else with eggs for supper. He couldn't eat much.
So you lived in which hotel?
You know what?
Did you just say you lived in one of the hotels?
The old hotel,
The Bennett?
yeah. Benner, probably a couple.
The Bennett.
Benner, yeah, Benner. For about 2 or 3 years. We used to play in that all the time. We was all over that place. They caught a fire one time on a Saturday night, and everybody at the dance went down. And they had a water brigade from Valley Creek up. First one in there was Bill Sullivan, and we had 5 gallons of milk there, and he poured that on the fire. But they put the fire out.
So when you left and moved to Chalice and life went on, you met Marilyn and you guys were married, and when you went back to work at Stanley for the highway department, where did you live then?
When we moved back up Stanley,
Yeah.
we had a trailer house. We lived right as you go up the hill to the schoolhouse.
Oh.
Belonged to Kent Shaw at the time. And he made a pad there, and we had a trailer on it, and then he sold the place to Halaphides out of Buell. And we rented from them until we moved. But the schoolhouse, none of that was there then. That was our ski hill.
Where was your schoolhouse?
Right there at the little Quonset hut. Right down that street, Main Street there.
Right
The
by
end of
Harris.
End of the road there by the telephone office. In fact, the log house that I went to school is over where Shaw's used to live now. They moved it over there. but it was a one-room building. Then they had a set of partitions so they could partition the middle off, make two different. One side was the school and the other side was, they had a place where they served lunches.
Oh,
Or they could take the partitions out or whatever they wanted to do.
so when you were in school, you had a large family. Were you over half the class of?
Probably 3/4. More than the Laniers, we had 2 cousins too that went there.
How many Laniers total in school?
How many what?
Laniers total in school?
Oh, let's see, my sister, my brother, twin sisters. There were probably 5 and then 2 cousins. Probably about 7 of us at one time. Then the Flemings and the Lees, that was about the main schools. Savages too, I guess, they was there.
Savages, did they live in Lower Stanley?
And then they later bought the Markle store. Archie had it for a while, then they sold it.
The plane crash at Langer Peak,
Oh, well, I remember when it happened.
and
What it was is that military plane. I don't know how come they thought it was gonna crash or something with a big old bomber. All the people bailed out over the Middle Fork. And I remember hearing the old airplane, and they just set it on autopilot, and it crashed her down Chalice. But anyway, they were looking for the people, and Charlie Langer was in an airplane that crashed. Look while he was looking.
oh,
That's how Langer Peak got named. That used to be Roughneck Peak. And they named it Langer Peak because that's where he got killed at.
so they were looking for the bomber.
Looking for the people.
Oh,
The bomber, they knew where it went down because it crashed at Chalice. Up at Crane Basin, up toward, you know where the little canyon is out of Chalice? Going toward Mackey.
yes.
Back over that mountain over there.
Did they ever find the people on the Middle
They
Fork?
didn't find them all. Some of them they never found. They found a raft one time over on the Middle Fork. They thought maybe one of them would build a raft that was gonna float out or something, but they never did find them all.
Remember about when that happened?
It was in the 40s too, during the war. But they come in there with these 3 skis with the propeller on the back, you know, for like snow machines. But they didn't work very good because you get in them trees and they couldn't get around with them. And they was in there looking for people.
The difference in can you talk about the difference in the equipment, the state highway, from the time you started working until you retired?
Yeah,
Procedures, man.
well, before I can remember when, but before we moved to Chalice in the 40s, they had to rebuild their stuff, and they put a V8 engine in an Oshkosh truck and all this different stuff. I don't know if you knew, what was his name, the mechanic from Show. Schonk. Cletus Schonk, did you know him?
No.
Well, everything they said was Schonkenized because he'd build everything. I mean, if you had something wrong, he'd with wire or whatever, he made it run. He'd put a Ford motor in one of them Oshkoshes, and they welded the darn fan on there, and it started it up and wound it up, and that fan went right out through the back window of the shop there at Shaw's place. I remember Bud telling about that. But anyway, they put it together and they put 2 transmissions in there or something, and it had a vibration. So they took and heated the drive shaft and run it, and it straightened itself out. Like the turning out. But everything was, Cletus was still there when I went to work. Because I run a roller one time clear from down below Chalice. We sealed all the way from there clear to Stanley one summer. and run that darn roller, and it'd break down every so often. Cletus would come along and get her going again. It didn't make any difference what it was, whether it was fixing the sewer line or whatever, they get Cletus to do it.
When did the first blower come up into the Stanley area?
Oh, that was after I moved to Haley. They brought a blower over there about the year before I moved to Haley. I remember Bud running it. We had a hell of a time keeping the kids out of the school kids out. They wanted to get under that fall or the snow out there. But that's the first time I ever seen a blower.
Now, what year is that about?
That was 65. But they never did have, blowers on Stanley, or even in Haley. The special crew had all that stuff. And the only time they'd use it is when you got the special crew when the road was closed. They'd come up there and they'd halfway open it and then they'd leave. And then next week it might get another storm and it's closed again. Then they finally got smart and given it to us, and we kept the road open.
So you kept the roads open around Stanley just with a plow and a
Just with a
grader?
plow.
And a
And
bush
they had a loader, they had an old Pettibone loader, that Pettibone. And the only way they got that there was the old guy in Boise followed that roader all the way from Boise to Shoshone to Stanley, because old Buzz Yerrig, I don't know if you ever knew him or not, he was the special crew boss. He stole all the vehicles, the new ones, and they'd send it to somewhere and it'd end up at Shoshone. And he'd take them and give them the old stuff. But this guy, he followed that thing all the way over there and got it over to Stanley. They had it for years.